Yes, one of the classic F1 tracks is back, as well as another classic dispute from this year. The FIA is getting feisty again, with its president vowing that Andreti Cadillac will be going racing in Formula 1, even without the teams and Formula 1 management agreeing to the demands, and things are going to be very awkward, folks. If you're not exactly sure what's going on, you can watch my video here for a little bit more info on the subject. Mohammed bin Sulayem doesn't really see a problem of Andretti actually competing in Formula 1 when they want to enter in 2025. He has granted the license in theory for the team to compete in Grand Prix weekends. They could do it without even getting any prize money from Formula 1, which is the big problem that the teams and Formula 1 management have with Andretti joining the sport. Because as far as the FIA are concerned, there's no real issue administratively with an 11th team competing in the sport because all Grade 1 listed tracks have to comply with what the FIA and Formula 1 need, up to 13 teams as of the current Concord Agreement. So what's the problem? Whilst Mr. Sulayem does admit that Stefano Domenicali and Formula 1 management can say no themselves, the act of competing has already been granted. Now, of course, Mr. Sulayem hopes that it doesn't come to this, where we have a situation where Andretti rock up to a weekend and Formula 1 basically just goes, I don't see an 11th team anywhere. Do you, Toto? No, I absolutely do not see an 11th team. But the mere fact that it's even being mentioned, this particularly weird arrangement, is a cause for concern. What's going to happen to the broadcasting of this particular race? What if an Andretti car is leading, hypothetically, the Grand Prix? Are they just going to blur out the cars, just go, and second place is Max Verstappen, and I don't know who's in first, but they're about 10 seconds away, if they even exist. It could be, as far as I know, the Lochlands Monster leading the Toronto Grand Prix. This could get really petty, folks, where you might just have an 11th team, but the cameras just pretend they don't exist, and it's just like you're having to actively dodge the Andretti drivers and the Andretti team, and Michael Andretti probably trying to photobomb every single shot to go like, hey, we're here. We might be even doing really well. These are meant to be two high-flying organizations here, and they can't figure out an 11th team entry. And at the moment, there are so many rumors going around that Audi might be getting cold feet about their involvement with Sauber and joining in 2026, with the new CEO of Audi showing concerns about needing to balance the books and thinking about priorities. And if they do that, it's going to be a major embarrassment for Formula 1 and Stefano Domenicali, because they made a big song and dance about Audi joining last year. If Audi don't do it, then what does that show for any other manufacturer? F1 is not to be taken seriously. And then it's double standards, because there is a team who is right here wanting to compete. The FIA said they're more than fit to actively compete without any problems of financial irregularities. And all the while, Formula 1 just shunned them because, yes, they want American money, but they don't want American teams. No. They have one at home already, who's currently lost and mostly operates out of Modena. I know it's not specific to the Brazilian Grand Prix, but it is a Grand Prix weekend, and this is pretty big. But back to Interlagos, one of the best tracks on the grid, and definitely an ideal circuit for a sprint weekend, which is what we've got. Don't worry, folks, Interlagos will not let us down. In all the times it's had a sprint weekend, all 2 of them, we have really had a good experience, an exciting 3 days, including Kevin Magnussen getting Haas's only pole in Formula 1. All of the upsets, all of the changeable conditions, the fact that we have an entire weekend packed with sessions, this is going to be good. And on top of that, we are going to get rain on Friday. This can only mean one thing: chaos, calamity, uncertainty. Oh, it's going to be fun for us, not so much for anybody working in Formula 1. And if anyone's working for a team in Formula 1, I'm sorry, I don't mean to rub your nose in it. But all you're going to have is 1 hour practice and then a wet session, which means that all of the data you've collated will be effectively meaningless for part of it and could throw a lot of upsets. We might have a really stonkingly exciting Friday, only for it to fall apart on Sunday because there's no rain expected on the Saturday and Sunday, and then anyone out of position will fall back into position quite quickly because there are a lot of competitive teams out there. But hey, on Friday, at least it'll be fun. Now, I'm going to take a punt here, and I don't think this is going to be a track where Max Verstappen will romp to victory. It's going to be tight, and Mercedes will be the challenging team. They are very, very good at Interlagos. This could be a race where they could go for the win. Interlagos is a crucial track If they can't win here, Mercedes, this is going to be a winless season. The first season that they have not won a Grand Prix since 2012. Where Nico Rosberg took their first victory in their modern iteration. This has also been a track where the Red Bulls have been a little bit inconsistent. Sure, Max Verstappen has won before and shown competitiveness, but it's been a little bit tighter than the average circuit, where I feel like Mercedes could capitalize on it. They have been very, very strong here, and Lewis Hamilton, you cannot count him out here, because this is effectively his second home track, since he is now also a Brazilian citizen as well as a British citizen. They love Lewis Hamilton in Brazil, and since they don't have any Brazilian drivers on the grid, they're going to gravitate toward Lewis, and this is not going to help Checo in trying to keep second place in the drivers' standings. And yes, it's just a shame we don't have Brazilian drivers in Formula 1, man. It's just not right. We need more Brazilian drivers. Just get Felipe Drugovich in there, please. But don't expect Max to be a pushover here. He will be a mercurial force. He would have done better last year had he not clashed with Hamilton and gotten a 5-second penalty for all of that shenanigan. This is going to be a fight where Hamilton and Verstappen can lock heads with one another and not worry about the consequences. This will be fun for them because Hamilton is looking forward to challenging Verstappen once again in 2024 if the W15 is led to be believed a compellingly fast car. And Max Verstappen looks forward to it. He would like to have another challenge. If it comes from Lewis, a driver he does respect, it'll be good for him. He will be actively pleased and not bored. Who do I think is going to come out on top? Well, you're just going to have to wait until later in the video to find out. But as for George, I don't know. I don't think he's going to be as strong as Lewis because the car is pushing toward Lewis Hamilton more so than George. And he has been really scruffy the last few races. And Mexico really didn't help where he almost got overtaken by an Alphatauri. And if that had worked one more lap, that would have been a very major blot on his 2023 record book. But having said that, he did win the sprint and main race last year, so we can't count him out entirely. I feel like he will be a challenger for the top 5 at the very least, but having said that, I feel like Ferrari might do well here as well, because nobody expected them to do that well at Mexico, a front row in qualifying, and still being in the top 4 come the end of the race. That was very, very impressive, and I feel like now, since the temperatures at Interlagos will be a lot cooler, tyre deg won't be so much of an issue. And the Ferrari is very, very good down the straight. Haas was one of the fastest cars in the speed trap, and Bottas almost broke his own speed record at the same track he broke it in 2016 for Williams and Mercedes. That is very, very interesting. So Sector 3, if they can get the exit right, will be very, very good for a nice toe into Turn 1 and the Senna S, and then into the second DRS zone, or technically the first DRS zone. Charles might do better, since he does have the edge over Carlos in qualifying, and I feel that might translate well into a decent position in the top 5. But hey, Russell, that whole situation with Daniel overtaking him nearly, that was very, very close. Speaking of, I expect Daniel to score it again here. Will he be a contender for the top 5? I don't know. I kind of want to say yes, but I got to be logical and say no. The Alphatauri is a lot faster than it was at the beginning of the season, but Mexico was such a huge fluke, and it turned out it's because the Alphatauri team got their cooling solution just right. Not too many Louvre, and not in a position where it was going to make the car very draggy like Haas's was. They got it just right in the positioning. But cooling's not really going to be that much of an issue here, so I feel like their advantages in that department will be mitigated. But I feel like Daniel Ricciardo, now that we know what he requires in a car, will do well here. This track is all about corner entry, and that's what Daniel Ricciardo wants. He doesn't mind so much if the speed isn't that great, so long as the car is pliable in the turns. This will be something very, very interesting to see, especially since 2022 wasn't good for Daniel. He crashed out, crashing into Magnussen. I think even if he just finishes, it'll be an improvement over last year. And I feel like Alphatauri as well might be a good contender for a double points finish if Yuki can get over his issue at Mexico when he clashed with Piastri, and then went on a little mini tirade against the stewards saying that, oh, they prefer the faster and bigger teams. But Yuki, you were very lucky not to get a 5-second penalty there, or something even worse. Much like how Checo could have waited to get Leclerc into turn 3 and maybe have made Mexico a Red Bull 1-2. But no, Checo had to go for the win, meaning that he has not learnt that Max is not catchable. Do not go after Max. You will have a bad time. But anyway, Checo, okay. Logic would dictate that you cannot really predict what he's going to do, because Mexico, that should have been a solid podium finish since he was able to do it in 21 and 22. and he didn't even finish the race, and it looked like he was going to come back in again just for the sake of driving around the Mexican track and the fans could see him. I want to put him in the top 5. In fact, I probably might do, but I don't know whether he'll be close enough to Max to even challenge for the win. Red Bull will be decent here, and Checo is good. He is consistent around here. He has consistently scored, even in the days of Force India. I feel like he might be on for a podium in the sprint race, but in the main race, top 5 is debatable. But I feel like it's really not going to matter. Lewis Hamilton is on it this weekend. He loves this circuit. The audience loves him. Checo will be a smidge lucky if he's still second after the weekend, because Hamilton has got a point to prove. Mercedes are going to give everything to Lewis to get second place in the driver's standings. A small crumb of comfort, as was second place in the team standings. Yeah, sure, they were nowhere close to Red Bull, but they managed to get something out of what looked very shaky at the beginning of the year. Okay, as for McLaren, because I haven't mentioned them, what can they do? Well, I don't really know, because what's becoming very clear is that the MCL60 has evolved into being a pretty decent all-rounder. We all thought that the low-speed corners would have been the detriment of McLaren's campaign in Mexico, but no! Lando, in those corners, getting Ricciardo and Russell. Yeah, sure, Russell was compromised with his tyres, but wow! Nobody would have expected that from a McLaren car of recent years. Lando's recovery from 17th to 5th was probably one of his best drives of his entire career. A burn from the Stern campaign. Brilliant. I love those. Having said that, I think Lando would have rather started from the front and then stayed at the front. It made things a little bit more complicated, but Lando did it. Nevertheless, he is a very strong contender for the podium, because if the McLaren car is a good all-rounder, this should really not be much of a problem. And Lando has shown that he is evolving into Lando Prime. This is going to be a taster of what we can expect in 2024 if the MCL37 can start off being competitive instead of being a slow coach and then becoming better later on in the season. McLaren need to be good right out of the gate to make Lando a viable championship contender. As for Oscar, I don't know. This is a brand new track for him, the last brand new track, because in Vegas it's going to be brand new for everybody, and Abu Dhabi, he's familiar with it from Formula 2. I just don't think he's going to be breaching the top 5. He's still got a lot to learn. This is going to be a tyre shredder of a track. Oscar still has got a lot to learn in managing tyres. But to be fair, Mexico, he was hindered with damage, mostly from Yuki's collision with him. It meant that he really couldn't catch up to Russell or figure in the Daniel situation, but he was mature enough to let Lando through and he got to 5th, Lando. So that means he is a team player. I feel like he will score again. He might do better in the sprint because he will learn from Austin not to cook the tyres too early. Maybe P7 or so in the main race. I don't really know, but I don't think he's going to be a contender for the top 3. Not a podium, not a top 5. But it should be a decent, quiet weekend for him. A lot more learning, ready for 2024. Okay, who else is going to score? Well, like I said, I feel like Alphatauri, if Yuki can settle down, will be a good contender for a double points finish, making Williams' time of it in P7 all the more shaky. Alfa Romeo, I don't really think they'll do anything. Q3 in Mexico should have expected at least one of them to score, but they didn't. Haas, forget it. Albon probably will be able to pull a rabbit out of the hat and maybe get a cheeky P10. Sargent, I don't really know. The P7 battle is going to get all the more intense. There is a lot to play for here, but I feel like Alphatauri care more about P7 than Williams do. Sure, it'd be nice for Williams to finish P7. It'd be a crowning glory that they would have never expected at the beginning of the year. James Vowles steering the ship into something more competitive than expected. But this is still a transitional period for Williams. They are still trying to figure themselves out. They'll be pleased not to be last because they still have one of the slowest cars on the grid. So even if it's P8, it's still something to be proud of. 2024 will be a time where Williams start to see the benefits of their new leadership. 2025 with their new technical director, that'll be even better. That will be the season where we fully see the results of James Vowles' leadership come into fruition. Okay, let's get to the main predictions proper. And who is going to win? I'm going to stick my neck out here, not be safe, and I'm going to go Lewis, but it'll be very close. It's going to go down to the very bitter end, probably within 3 seconds or something like that. Lewis Hamilton is a demon around here. Max Verstappen is also good around here. This is something where it's almost too close to call, but I feel like Lewis is on it at the moment. He is very, very hyped. There is something about him which I have not seen in a very long time, and I feel like he is going to go into 2024 with an absolute point to prove. He is also determined to make sure that Mercedes don't have a winless season. This is their last chance to avert catastrophe in their statistical books. And yeah, Just Lewis loves this track. I feel like he will definitely be on for the win in the sprint as well. But I feel like the main race, it'll be very tight, but he might just edge out Max Verstappen, who will finish second. Probably a very big distance away from P3, who I am going to give to Lando Norris. That burn from the Stern campaign in Mexico, it would be foolish not to consider the McLaren for a podium position. It will not be in the top 2, but I feel like it will be a decent distance away from P4. He'd probably have a very quiet weekend if he qualifies well. And who do I put in for 4th place? Well, it's going to be Ferrari, but I don't think it's going to be Carlos. I feel like Charles Leclerc, if he can have a decent qualifying, keep away from any drama, and have a quiet weekend, I feel like it's certainly doable. The only reason why I don't put him any higher is because McLaren, Mercedes, Red Bull, they seem to be on it, their drivers are motivated, and I feel like Ferrari just aren't quite there yet. They have improved. They defied expectations in Mexico, but it's going to be very, very close. It's going to be almost unpredictable, but I have to make a prediction of some kind. And as for 5th place, I'm going to give it to Checo. I'm very, very uncertain about that 5th place, but it's going to be Sergio, but it'll be a big distance away from Charles. He'll just about get in there. He'll probably do better in the sprint. But I feel like Friday, with the changeable conditions, the qualifying, it might lead for an awkward Q2 exit for Checo, and he'll have to do a recovery drive to get anywhere near the podium, probably 5th place. I don't know. Mexico was a do-or-die moment, and he died badly. It was a greedy move, but it was very, very strange that Marco and Horner were very quiet about it. Their comments have been relatively tame, probably because they wanted to get out of Mexico safely before they actually exchange any barbs. But anyway, I feel like Sergio will do better around here, but not quite enough to make an impact on the battle for 2nd place. He might be able to do some damage limitation a little bit, maybe drag it into Vegas, whereas we might actually see Perez do better than Hamilton. We don't know, because Vegas is brand new. There's a lot of uncertainty here. But going back to what I said at the beginning, the FIA and Formula 1 management is getting so immature right now. And if you really want to understand what's going on here, about why this is getting so pathetic, you can watch this video next to get the entire scoop of it, and why you'll be just going, just decide already!